played this game, and I played all the Sims. I love those silly games, and I guess I look back with rose-tinted glasses because I don't remember this being poorly received.
I somehow heard about it and like really hyped it up in my own head as just being like, this is it. Like this is the game. And like I still have a lot of those like feelings in terms of like, I really think for me, like there's a game in here for me is like, boom, you found it.
This idea that they're on a hot streak and they're going to revolutionize like what a video game is, especially some of the videos that were coming out beforehand. And we'll take a look at some of the stuff that they showed.
There is a form of multimedia entertainment beyond that which is good. These games are as vast in number as they are terrible. They dwell in the dark recesses of history, unearthed from the pits of the bargain bin. These are the games of horror. This is Garbage Game Night.
Welcome to Garbage Game Night, a podcast about poorly received, discount, or weird games. Every once in a while, a game comes along that will promise so much, that tells you anything is possible, that you can control every bit of everything, that there is absolutely no way it can live up to its expectations. So tonight, we're going to be talking about a game that tried to capture life itself, perhaps the most ambitious and last project of the famed game designer Will Wright. We're talking about the 2008 Maxis game Spore. Now, some might be upset and say, hey, fuck you, Spore isn't a garbage game, it's a really good game. And, well, maybe. I don't know, we'll talk about it. It definitely has some mixed opinion. It had a ton of hype and a pretty lukewarm reception. And I say that because, like, as I was playing this game on Twitch on stream, like, people who came in and there's a community who follows Spore, and I said, like, oh, yeah, we're going to do this on our podcast, Garbage Game Night. And they're like, what? It's a great game. So, we'll get into it, why people have this opinion. But we're going to need some multiple takes on this game.
The podcast is actually about games that make other games feel like garbage. So that's what we're playing. So that's why we're playing Spore, because this game makes any other game attempting to be what it is feel like garbage.
Maybe. That's a take.
Shifting the podcast.
So we're gonna need some takes for this. So let me introduce our other guests here. Let's see. The randomized order that I have this evening is Carly. How are you doing tonight?
Hi, I am doing well, thanks. How are you, Chris?
Oh, I am good, thank you. I'll give you your point, and glad to have you, Hunter. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good. Doing well.
Good. Excellent. We have Frank as well. Franklin, how are you?
I'm doing swell.
Excellent. It's not. There's no other thing that Frank is short for, is it? Frank. I was thinking like Frankerford. No, there's not. It's just Frank.
Franklin.
You mean
Franklin.
anything that's shorter than Frank?
What are there any other nicknames for Frank?
No, that's what I'm saying. I don't think there is. I think
it's just Frank.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the smallest you go.
And you don't get any bigger than that either. It's just Frank. Just Frank. Well, it's great to have you, Frank.
Well, no, it's Francis. Franklin, Frankfurt.
That's what I was missing. Francis.
My name, my real name is Francis. My government name is Francis.
Is it?
Wow, I did not know that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's okay. We've just worked together. You know,
you guys have been
joining each other on pay stubs.
20 years.
I don't know if I've ever handled any official paperwork for you, though.
I know that you have, but that's fine.
Oh, because you notarized something for me?
You co-signed my wedding vows.
Oh, wow. Yikes.
That'd be hilarious if that needed a cosign.
I made that up on the spot and it was bad. I was going for a wedding certificate or something. What do you sign?
Hey,
I'm not
it
married.
might drive down the divorce rate, if there was people that were like, listen, I'm invested in this too,
Frank's
listen, these vows are shit, bud.
I'd invest in your wedding anytime, Frank. Or, I guess I've already missed that opportunity. Your marriage.
You were there. You were there.
I was there. I remember. I was
Once
there.
again, you were there. So
I was there.
You did invest already.
Chris doesn't give a shit about Frank.
You
actually captured one of the best moments of the wedding.
Moment of your wedding. It wasn't what was happening, the vow exchanging or anything. I was in the back. I turn around and glance, and the ceremony was in your backyard, and I had a view down the street, and there was a kid, maybe like 8 on his bike, just sitting there staring with the most dumbfounded look on his face. So I had a nice video of
most of the neighborhood knows those people got married in the backyard. Yeah, it's a great video. It's one of my favorite videos. Yeah.
Thomas, how are you this evening, Tom?
I'm good, and I'm excited about this because I think more than any game that we've ever done, this game deemed to fly, and much like Icarus, it burst into flames and failed. I have like
celestial body, the sun.
I mean, we'll talk about it obviously later, but there are moments in which I think this game just came so darn close to just nailing it, and I don't know. It's almost like it just gets distracted from itself. Like it's about to be great, and then it does something different, and you're like, "But what about your premise?" And like,
yeah.
I don't know.
But before we get into the game we're talking about this evening, it's time for our trash talk section. A chance to talk about anything you're playing and stuff in the gaming world. You got something to rant or rave about? Here's your chance.
I got a little quick thing. This is a little bit of a throwback to one of our recent discussions where I should have utilized the website Does the Dog Die?
Does the Dog Die?
On Game Pass, there is Plague. It's like a plague story. Something. Plague Tale, that's the one. And I was like, oh man, this might be like kind of a Grace and I will like play a game together, and like especially like in that vein of like, oh, figure out a puzzle kind of thing. We'll puzzle it out together. And on screen instantaneously in the opening of the game, and it's a happy. I mean, the first 10 seconds are happy. And then that game just really spirals into misery. But there's a dog, and Grace instantaneously was like, it is going to die. And I was like, stop. It's not going to die. Like, it's not every time a dog's on screen is it going to die. And it died, man. Like, it died so fast. And like in a bad way.
How did it die?
You're like in the woods with your dad, and like, it's like chasing a scent. And it's chasing a boar, and then like the boar is dead in a way that's like, what the hell happened to that boar? And the dog keeps going, and you like hear the dog whimpering, and you're like, oh no. And you get to the dog, and it's like half in a scary demon hole, and the dog's like whimpering, and you're like, what's happening? And then the dog gets pulled into the hole violently. Yeah, that's just like, where do you go from there?
Would you recommend the game though?
Yes, I think in short, I definitely would. It's one of those things that you're very lucky to has like a fast reload time. It's just instant death, and like you'll enter a room. And like, let's say in that moment, 5 seconds will be going down where like a situation presents itself to you, and you'll be like, oh my God, do I go under I'm dead. And then like, so like, you don't have time to be like, okay, so let me, I have a pretty good layout of the room. Like, where am I supposed to do? So you just like die 8 different ways. And then you're like, oh, I was supposed to go to the cupboard, I guess. Like, so stuff like that happens. But outside of that, it's definitely good. Lots of like sneaking and hiding. And you have your little brother with you, which usually is like I feel like that kills every game. But it's done in a, like the AI for the brother doesn't kill himself and stuff. So it's good.
Oh, good. All right. Anyone else want to toss anything else in there?
Yeah, I've been playing Settlement Survival. It's a city builder and city management game. It was part of the Steam sale over the weekend, so I grabbed it. It's pretty cool. It's just your typical city builder if you've played any version of that before. And I'm currently on year 21 of my settlement, and we almost have plumbing.
Whoa.
Next year,
is it like post-apocalyptic, or is there a story as to why you're...
No, there's like no story.
It's literally just like SimCity, but settlement
just casual,
building, or
but it's cool. It's really fun. Looking. I've done it wrong. There was little to no instruction, and a nice idle, peaceful game.
Cool. Nice casual city builder. All right.
And then also Phasmophobia, as we know.
Yeah, we were talking before stream that you guys are consumed by your ghost hunting now.
When I'm not going after the Lords of Cinder in Dark Souls 3, I ghost hunt on the side.
It's a nice hobby.
But that's Dark Souls 3. I picked it up. It was on sale. I didn't really have any intention of playing it immediately, but I popped it on, and I don't know. I guess I feel like that type of game style finally clicked, and I've like progressed further and faster than in any of the Soulsborne franchise before.
So we're in the news section. I did have a note in here that it's not video game news, but happy 100th birthday in memory of Betty White. Aww. And I tried to make it like as video game centric as possible, like find a way to tie it in. But as far as I saw someone tweet like as well, like, has she ever been in a video game, or her voice ever been in a video game? And seemingly no. Like it just this somehow with all of her credits just never managed to do it. So
wow, what a video game bigot Betty White was.
That's what she said till the end, was she hated video games.
Leave it to Chris to bring up one of her failures.
Yeah.
So the last game we played, we always talk about in this section, was Zombie Dinos from Planet Zeltoid, a little known game with perhaps the greatest soundtrack in video game history. It was a roguelike Souls-esque dinosaur trivia game, as some reviewers said.
As one idiot said.
Tom, since you weren't here with us, at the cost of 10 points, could you tell us what was the main dinosaur's name? Because I know you listened to the episode, right?
Yeah, I did. Even though it was a busy week, but I did watch
that
it.
dino's name.
His name was Dino. Dino the Dino.
The dinosaur's name was Dexter. The
Damn it! I knew it was like a D. I was like, it's gonna be close. Like,
it's okay. I'm sure you can work your way back up, Tom. I'm sure you can.
Does that mean am I gonna be negative 10?
Negative 10 on the board for you there. We go to negative 10 here at Garbage Game Night. You know that, Tom.
Oh, is that's the bottom? We go to only negative 10?
Yeah, right now I make the points up. So, other news in the gaming world: Troy Baker, known for voicing Joel in The Last of Us and Booker DeWitt in BioShock Infinite, and many more voices, is stirring up the mob by getting into NFTs and something about selling voices or something. And so everyone hates him now. And the pandemic is over. Who knew? Or at least the digital board game is, because for some reason they delisted all ways to buy the digital version of Pandemic.
Huh.
And nobody knows why. It's kind of an odd situation. It's a popular game.
Too many sales.
Yeah, too many sales. That's what they said. Everyone has a copy
too
of it.
Good.
But like they aren't under any more pressure to, delist it or anything. It's not like they have to keep a low profile. We're 2 years into this now, right? So everyone seems to assume that the maker Asmodee is delisting it because they're finding a way to make more money off of it. But as the podcast at the forefront of reporting on the situation, we'll keep you updated on this pandemic mystery. So we're going to move into the game this evening. Tonight's episode is a pre-play, meaning we've all played this game beforehand, and we're together in this support group to talk about what we've been through. But I don't think this is one that has that many painful experiences in comparison to some of our pre-plays. This game, the year was 2008, and after much hype coming off The Sims and The Sims 2, made by Maxis, they released the game Spore, one of their only games not to include the word sim in the title, although at one point the project name was Sim Life. The pitch for this game was to control an alien species from microbe or spore all the way through its evolution into a galactic force. You could choose to be a carnivore, herbivore. You can be diplomatic, economic powerhouse, alien invaders. Your creation for your creature you would craft would carry on from the beginning to the end, and all these alien designs would be community driven. It's one of the widest scope game pitches there has ever been. There's procedurally generated planets, thousands of potential, creature combinations. Well, I guess kind of unlimited creature combinations, hundreds of parts for the creatures, though. It is truly a god game and life simulator. So how could they possibly, fall short of that? Well, that's what we're talking about tonight. I'm going to hit play on this one that we'll have in the background here, which is me playing, because that allows me to have two of myself on the Twitch stream at once, which you guys know I love doing. So, like I said, this game came out in 2008. So I wanted to ask before we talked about our recent plays, had you guys played this in 2008? Did you know about it at least?
Yeah, it's been really tough for me to keep my mouth shut this long. I played this game and I played all the Sims. I love those silly games. And I guess I look back with rose-tinted glasses because I don't remember this being poorly received.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't actually own a copy of the game back then, but my friend did, and so I would go on and borrow that or use his copy and create my little creatures here. Though I did play it back then, playing it now for the show, there was a lot that I didn't remember about it, but yeah, I certainly had some experience with it back in the day, so...
Yeah,
I thought it was more popular than it sounds like you're all describing now.
Well, yeah, we'll get into the like why I even put it on, chose it for a game that we have here. But yeah, anyone else remember playing it?
I did play it when it came out, and I don't know, maybe I had a little bit of different experience from Carley in that, like, I when they pitched it, like, I remember, I don't know, I somehow heard about it before it had come out and like really hyped it up in my own head as just being like, this is it. Like this is the game. And like, I still have a lot of those like feelings in terms of like, I really think for me, like there's a game in here that like for me is like, boom, you found it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like this is like it gets so close to being like, like a perfect game for me. Are you intending to like talk about each stage? Because that seems like
can go stage by stage a little bit, and we'll introduce each stage. Yeah. So
okay, that's good, because I think my feelings dramatically alter through each stage, and I feel like like so. Yeah. But yeah, so I don't know, but I guess all I would say as a hint to that is that like the same. At 35, the same place I petered out this time, where I was just like, I don't want to play anymore, was my only recollection of where the game went as a child. So I have a feeling I got to this stage as a kid and was just like, oh, this isn't what I signed up for. I'm not having fun anymore. But I went back to what I liked about it a lot as a kid.
So I would say as this is the first time I've ever played this one. I've ever played Spore. I played Dark Spore before this, but we can talk about that later. But Spore, I've never played Spore before.
You remember hearing about it?
I heard a lot about it. Yeah, okay. I remember hearing about like the big, what it promised and that it didn't deliver as much. But I think I have like a really similar. Yeah, the different stages are super important because it's like 4 different games.
Yeah. We'll talk about like how each one plays, and it is like they jammed. I mean, there's things that join them together, obviously, but yeah, there's it's like we're talking about 5 different games in this one. Frank, had you played this one? The youngest of us.
So Spore came out when I was in high school, and there's one kid who I knew who had it, and he said he was going to make a copy for me, but I had to provide him with the Blu-ray disc because that was how, it was a big game.
Oh, wow.
Back in the day, it was like one of the earliest games I can remember where it's like,
Frank,
if you wanted it,
a crime, okay,
you would need a Blu-ray, right? But anyway, I just never got him the Blu-ray, so he never made it for. And like it became kind of like a joke. I'm like, hey, do you have Spore? And he's like, hey, did you give me those Blu-rays? And I'm like, so it was like a funny. It was a thing we do back and forth. Anyway, so I didn't actually get it until after I graduated high school, 2011, 2012.
Okay. So you had played it back then. Okay.
So I had an account and everything. It's funny that none of my monsters were on the accounts. So I don't know, maybe that's why, because I originally did it through Amazon. I don't know. Either way. But I remember, I believe I beat the game as far as, because there's really no, I mean, I think there's kind of like an end to some extent.
There's kind of an ending, which we'll talk about in the Galactic
So
stage.
I'm pretty sure I did that on that. Honestly, I kind of liked it because I didn't know that it changed, the gameplay changes, and I will get into them more. So I remember when I first did it, I was like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. This is way cooler than I thought it'd be, Yeah. So I was like, oh, this is kind of boring. And then as it evolved, I was like, okay, this is different. Yeah. And then because you end up going to space, I didn't know. I thought that was a DLC. And I was like, oh, wait, you go to space without the DLC,
Right.
So it was, I thought that was interesting.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I enjoyed it back in the day.
All right. Yeah, I remember seeing the trailers probably in like 2007. This game came out in 2008. And so I was definitely on the hype train, like you were saying, Tom. And I knew this came from the developer of SimCity, The Sims, thinking like this idea that they're on a hot streak and they're going to revolutionize like what a video game is, especially some of the videos that were coming out beforehand. And we'll take a look at some of the stuff that they showed. And I remember they released I had mixed information about this. I thought it was free, but I heard someone say that there was a paid creature creator tool that came out months before the game Spore did. So you had the entire creature creator tool, and you could create the creatures, link it to your Spore account, and be saving your creatures. And then when the game did come out, you'd be loading them in there. And the creature creator, which we'll talk about separately a little bit later, but you could just so easily create these 3D models, like with all these different parts, and they came out looking great. It's like playing with clay, and you're creating these awesome looking creatures. And that's not something that I recall being able to so easily do. And that really stuck with me. And again, that's a great part of it. So that
and
built
not
up the hype
since
as well. Yeah, there's things that do it, but it's so easy to work with this tool, and they have a look to them, Is it a great look? I don't know, but it's a look. And but I remember I was dating my wife at the time, and I was visiting her out of state, and she was in a class, and I was in her school library, and I was playing the creature creator tool on my laptop there. And I remember like two separate people like walked behind me, and one of them talked to me, and another one just walked by and told someone, "Oh, that's the Spore game that's coming out." Like there was actually a buzz about this game that as it was coming out, it was like a big deal. Then the game came out, and I looking at because I was able to link my original account, and I can see like my creature create times, and it was like within the first week of the game launching. And I remember being really underwhelmed. Like none of it was actually that fun to me. And even when I think I played it like really hard for the first 2 weeks, and then as Tom said, like I wasn't sure whether I actually beat the game. And once I got into it, I realized and remembered everything. Like, oh yeah, these parts to it, and I did spend a lot of time in there, but it didn't make that much of an impression on me, obviously, because I forgot about like the last 2 stages entirely. But all right, well, we've talked about our experiences with it, so we got some gameplay up here first. Going into this, did you get into naming your planet and creating your creature, because you get to choose at the very beginning on the cell stage whether you're herbivore or carnivore? Did you go in with an intent when you guys started this gameplay?
What got me into games, I'm gonna try not to make like a really boring ass story, but like I remember like my dad was like, I don't know, I was a huge nerd. My dad was just like super cool. So I remember like a weird bonding moment with my dad he was like, okay, my kid really likes games. Like we're going to go to a store. And we went to a video game store, and we talked to this guy. He was like, what do you like to do? Like, what are you into? And my dad's like, well, he reads a lot of books. You should play Baldur's Gate. And he's like, it's an RPG. There's lots of reading. And like, that was just like, for me, like that didn't happen. That's made me a gamer. Like it's Baldur's Gate 2 is my favorite. It was like probably my favorite game of all time. And like what I realized is like, for me, the pinnacle of gaming is like that, what you just said, like creating your own narrative. And like this idea that you could just have so much creative control and like create like every part of this being your world. 100%, like 100%, like was super excited. Like, and I probably pondered over the name of the planet and the name of the like for way longer than anyone should. Like I cared a lot about all of that. Yeah. Is it okay to talk about this level?
The cell part? Well, yeah. So actually, I was going to ask you first. So let's start at the beginning with the cell. Life begins in the classic way. A meteor glances off a star or something and crashes into a planet, something life. So Tom, do you want to take a crack at explaining like what this stage is, the first cell stage?
Well, so let me say, like, I think in terms of like meeting its goal, this is where Spore gets its absolute closest. Where I mean that is that like, so one, the only flaw of this level at all, in my opinion, is that like it ends very shortly. Yeah. They rush you out of this level. Like I think you'd be done like under 10 minutes. Sure. And if you decide to stay, it just feels like there's no worth in staying. So basically you're starting off as like a tiny, like, multi-celled organism. Yeah. And what's so cool and where they're, like I said, they're hitting the mark on everywhere is that like you're going around, you're collecting DNA and these other pieces. If you're a herbivore, you're eating little pieces of like little plankton-y type things, but you're running away from carnivores. And it's exciting to be like, oh no, like running away, and like you're thinking about defense and like, okay, how should I, and the position, like you, like on stream right now, you've got like your spikes, right?
Spikes on either side of my head, yeah.
But so that's where I'm saying like this game, it hits it. Perfect is where you put those spikes is absolutely integral to your entire play style. Like it changes the whole game. You could put mouths on the side of your head. You could have 2 mouths if you wanted, and like make it so that you're like, you know, you got like a porpoise thing going on where like you're all defense in the front. You could like it really mattered. Like if you put it like 3 degrees off to the side, like you're like, okay, I'm going to have to adjust my play style to fit this design that I came up with. And with each level, think about like, what do I need? Do I need more speed? And you're like, oh man, I'm getting chased by some pretty big carnivores. They're pretty quick. Like I need to focus on changing that.
Guy with a little like jet stream thing. You're like, oh, I got to kill him so I can get that body part.
Just or you're like
evolution.
Or maybe you're thinking like, man, I gotta like, I don't really need to be fast. I'm gonna armor up. You know, I'm gonna add a lot more spikes on here and like it just have like real solid defense that they can't get to me. And I just think that this level, like, I think it hits the mark so closely. If it went longer and you were able to like dive even deeper, I think this is what I mean. Like as we go into the next one, but I'll stop. It's just like that thread right there of I'm creating something with not just creative intention, but with utility,
right? And
my changes are going to have a dramatic difference on its utility. And like that thread right there, that is what Spore should be, is like the nexus of utility and creativity and like coming up with something that, because what they're really selling is a unique play style. Like you can play a game that no one else is going to play like 10 seconds in because you did it differently than Hunter did it or Carley did it, you know, like you're right off the gate, like everything about it. And so those consequences from this point on, they lost that thread. And with each level, and we'll talk about it, but that's the problem. It's just each level loses a thread to a larger and larger degree where it's no longer about that anymore. But that's like, I just think this level has like so much like just so much beauty in its design. It's such an awesome idea. And I love coming up with like I like what you did with the poison there. Like there's a whole defense. So you could be like, okay, I'm going to attach poison, but I'm going to be fast. So I'm going to have things chase me into my poison. Yeah, you know, like that's
so what I created was this little creature that's trailing poison behind him, and if someone attacks me, I have spikes I can sort of turn my head and they run into instead of biting me. And I'm not particularly fast moving, but that's okay because I'm trailing poison and I'm pretty defensive. It's sort of like a Pac-Man style game or Slither, like a snake kind of you're trying to be the biggest fish in the pond, but in some ways though it's definitely the most simple. It's a top-down 2D game that you're just swimming around a pool of life and you see these giant creatures in the background, which is a really nice atmosphere. And you're just trying to gather up DNA points and that'll help you evolve, which is a giant meter on the bottom, and you can call in a mate and to evolve. Like you were saying, I think this stage works pretty well.
But it gives you the most customization, and like I think you really hit the nail on the head with like as the game gets bigger, the gameplay feels smaller, because like the first thing I noticed when we got on land was that it no longer mattered where my weapons were.
Right.
And like
right now it really matters if you have the spikes on the side of your head or on your tail. Yeah.
And I'll be honest, Carly just laughed because I just saved my game and I'm starting over again because of the way I play games. I zoomed through that level as fast as I can. I've started like 3 different characters and I've been doing like herbivore, omnivore, and carnivore and just seeing where I get. So I just made it to the tribal level and I'm like, wow, you're giving me like all this different gameplay, but I've lost like what was really cool about the beginning. And I felt it, but I didn't understand it. And the way Tom explained it, like I was feeling that the entire time you were talking. I was just like, oh my God, he's right. Like I've been trying to figure out what I enjoyed so much, because the first time I played it, like I said, like less than a week ago, I looked up and it was like 3 hours later. And like I had just been so sucked in by like the beginning, like you said, just like customization and your ability, like your playstyle changes based exactly on where you put your weapons. Like I had one where I put the jet on the front and was backing into people and like with the spike on my tail and like, but it just pushes you so quickly through that.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's probably 10 minutes or so. I don't know. My stream is up here. It feels like 10 minutes at least. Whatever it is, it should be a little bit longer.
Yeah, absolutely should.
Yeah, like this gameplay style. I think it was really good in 2008. Playing it in 2021, like there are other games out there that do it. Not exactly this, but I feel like they do some of these things smoother. Like there's bunches of things like Slither.io, and it reminded me of a game that I played on PS3 called Flow. I don't know if anyone else has played this like at all on PS3 Arcade. I'll throw it up on stream here real quick. So like really beautiful game that it was originally developed in Flash and released in 2006. And arguably like this game looks better. It doesn't do everything that Spore, like the Cell stage, does, but arguably this game like plays a lot cleaner and looks better than Spore does in its final state, though. So the point is like you're gobbling up things that are smaller than you, and you can eat things that are bigger, but you have to come at them very strategically. It's apples to oranges, but it just reminded me so much of this. And come to find out, this game actually came out a little bit before Spore. If you're interested in that, that's still out there somewhere. Flow with a capital O. But like you were saying, I think this mode is maybe one of the more enjoyable ones, but it just zips by. So in this mode, like when you're ready to level up and change your character, you guys know how you call your mate?
You push the button.
You probably use your cell phone.
Oh,
yikes! Yeah. Cell phone.
Oh man!
And maybe when you're there with your mate, you can take a selfie.
Audible groan.
Come on, I know you've got one more in there.
Come on.
Well, not in that chain, but what did the biologist wear on his first date with a pretty girl? He wore designer jeans.
Oh my god.
Chris, if you do one more of these, we're gonna have to throw you in a cell.
Oh my god.
Okay. That was equally as bad. You're both married.
All right. We will go on now to the creature stage. So you once you fill up that bar, it's that simple. It's a stage. You get to the end of the bar and you begin the next stage. You emerge out of the water. Well, I guess first you design your creature. They give you the option to they launch you into the creature creator with a couple things. The main thing being legs. So you can pop legs onto your creature and you wander out of the water. Frank, do you want to take a stab at explaining the creature stage if you can?
I mean, it's kind of
like
that's also
it's complicated. You do on the stage.
So the purpose of the stage is either to socialize and become friends with other creatures, right, or kill and eat them. And then whether you kill them or whether you socialize in a certain amount of them, that either causes them to go extinct or it causes them to be your ally. And then at which point you can make them part of your herd if you want to, or you can make other members of your own species part of your herd to make those activities easier. And you also go around and you collect bones, like there skeletons all around, that you can also get different DNA. Blueprints from that,
And this is like really where the creature creator opens up. They give you access to, you're finding lots of different parts as you go along by dancing at other animals or
singing at them,
posing, or eating them. And you can unlock the parts that they have. Like you said, you can find the bones on the ground and then you can upgrade with those. And this is like really where your creature can start to add on a lot of the parts that Spore is, known for in the creature creator. Yeah. And each one of the parts will have, usually will grant you a different ability. Like you get a certain style of leg and you can do the charge effect to attack other things. So you can have a different mouth that'll allow you to sing, different body parts that allow you to pose, or giving you different ways to interact with the other creatures. On stream, I created a creature with no eyeballs. I had never done that before, and everything is very dark. That's one of the things that will actually affect way you interact with the world. Most of it is like you get this ability that you're just clicking a button on that it grants your character, but the darkness was a new one for me.
Hunter actually said the perfect thing earlier where, so I was talking before about the idea of like creativity and utility, there's no more utility. It's kind of like that's the end of it. Is like in the cell stage, if you were to like surround yourself in spikes, there's like, but it's both, you know, it's the aesthetic look of being like a big spike ball, and you're protected from all sides. Like, it's irrelevant in this. Like, it gives you the ability to charge, but like if someone were to touch those spikes, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't interact.
It's all aesthetic.
Right. And I remember I forgot that going into this playthrough, and like really sat and was like, okay, this is what I'm intending to make. And tried to make something that like, I was like, it's going to have this kind of play style, and then realized like, and when I did both. I did 2 runs. Like, one is a herbivore and one is a carnivore. As an herbivore, I didn't really notice because I was just dancing all the time, you know? So like but I was never in combat. But as a carnivore, I realized really quickly, I was like, oh, I'm just clicking 4 attack buttons and then an animation occurs. My design means nothing. Like,
it really
not, I could make something that literally makes no. I could put the spike on my back and it would still let me charge, and I would charge with my face probably, you know. But like
on the Twitch stream, I decided that like the darkness wasn't fun anymore, so I just stuck some eyeballs on my butt. It's like, yeah, no, that's fine, that works.
Yeah,
you have eyeballs now. Yeah, great.
It's similar to any kind of game where I feel like where the further you pull out from like the action, the more you can customize from the top down, but the more detail you lose, and the more, like you said, utility you lose. You look at like World of Warcraft versus Warcraft or Starcraft, where you're pulling so far out, like what each individual unit does isn't a thing anymore. It's just a number that's applied to a giant spreadsheet, versus like, you know, we're talking about in the cell stage, like it matters where you put the spikes. It matters, you know, it's still numbers on a spreadsheet, but like, I guess you're just playing with different parts of the same thing. And like the further out you go, you lose those minute details, and there's a whole lot of, like Tom said, there's a whole lot of beauty in those tiny minute details and interesting things that you can do from the cell stage that you just lose out. And I was playing when we started the podcast, and I got to the tribal stage finally, and I'm just like, I have zero interest now. This is a completely different game.
Right? They throw out the like that would be my description of it. It starts with utility and creativity, and then you just have creativity, and then they throw out the creativity. And like
tribal stage definitely does that.
And like now you're just playing this really shitty like RTS that's not even, calling it an RTS doesn't even feel fair. Like it didn't earn that at all. No. Like, but if they kept like, so my pitch for like this whole game, you fix this whole game, would be like, go from cell to stage 2 and never go to tribal, and make it where like, and maybe it'd be super difficult, but I don't know, make it where like it matters just as much as it did in the cell stage, how and where you did everything and the utility of that. And like, so if you have spikes on your sides, it's like, stuff can't attack you from the sides now. You got to figure it out. You can maybe shimmy into people now. That's going to be your play style. Or like, oh, you spent all your points on speed. Like, okay, cool. Then you're working fast. But like in this, like you could seek out to make an animal very fast, and I could make like a one-legged creature, and as long as we have the same foot stat, then like we'll be the same. Like it doesn't, nothing matters anymore.
I think you should just stay as one creature. You should never go to that like pack thing, worrying about all that. It should have been like a solo game, and like as you evolve, like they could have like a standard way of their culture evolving, and you're just like, you're still one creature in that. And like, but you know, they couldn't do that with a game like this. You couldn't have that, like the spikes on the side working in like a 3D kind of facet, because they were just figuring that out in like MMOs where you know, because you know, you play like, again, original World of Warcraft, doesn't matter what you're doing or where you're standing, you're just standing in front of them pushing a button. And then when they, you know, you come out of that and you go into like newer MMOs, like maybe Warframe, where like the hitboxes actually matter.
Yeah. And this, like, I mean, to give them some credit, back in 2008, the idea that they had, it was revolutionary that they gave you a 3D creature creator and they had an algorithm to figure out how you make this thing walk. Like that was a huge leap forward on its own. But like you were saying, Tom, like I got, when I was designing this creature here on stream, I got a little bit sucked into the creativity of it. Like I made this big loping tail that went over top of my head and had a big spiky ball in it. I'm like, yeah, I want to see this thing like smash someone, but the animation wasn't there. Like the algorithm isn't there to figure out like where is your big spiky ball and you're doing the smash attack that ball gives you. Like it can't figure out like you press the smash button and your tail's going to whip around and hit them. No, your character just sort of does like a mini lunge towards them. You know, there's no animation like that, figuring that sort of thing out. And you get sucked into the stats a little bit on this, and they tell you the stats. It does matter that, okay, you have this spike having at least one of this spike is going to give you +4 to your smash attack or whatever. Like I got into it and was like, I'm going to have like all these, I'm going to have like 12 fanged mouths all over his body. But it turns out like that's no better than having one. It doesn't matter.
No.
Exact. Yes.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a creature where I'm going to make just a whole row of like spit things where like I'm just gonna be like a turret, you know, where I'm like boom, boom, and like that's how I'm gonna attack things. And I was like, wait, I'm not doing anything different than one.
Nope.
Yeah. No. And for something like that, it seems like that could be solved, because I feel like if you're going to invest your points, your limited supply of points into like getting all these different spitters, it seems like it could be solved by just giving you more buttons for it, right? Like just mapping like this spitter to button 1, this spitter to button 2. Like that seems like a solvable problem to me.
Or even just when you click it, instead of shooting one
you shoot them all.
Spit, you shoot 2 spits and then 3 spits, you know, like that's
something.
So I think like the creativity is stifled a little bit here. Like that's us with our like childlike wonder, like wanting to create these creatures, right? And that's stifled a bit by the limitations of the animations and everything on this. But like us maybe being adults and not being kind of clouded by the creativity that we're looking at, like this awesome creature that we created, we're looking at kind of min-maxing the stats of our creatures. And that's just kind of it's still a game when you get down to it, and you want to be like a powerful creature, right? So when you realize that like, oh, me having the 12 spikes is no better than having 1 spike, that kind of like sucks the fun out of it. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, maybe I should just like play into it. Maybe if like you're creative enough and don't care, it doesn't matter to you. But
you're right, you're hurting yourself, like because you're spending points on it.
Yeah.
So if you were to be like,
to
hey, I really like this, I'm going to spend all these points on this aesthetic idea, then it's like, oh, well, you're actively making a worse. And it seems like the game scales. If you did spend your points on that, the game will be like, oh, you're at like a bank of 500 genie points worth of strength, it seemed to me at least. So it'd be like, you should be able to handle stuff like this. But you're like, no, I made an aesthetic choice.
I wanted to look cool.
That is absolutely true, because I put all these points into the aesthetics, and then I hit a serious plateau in the game in the creature stage, because I was outmatched by everything. I could not befriend anything. I could not kill anything for the longest time. I had to start, after many, many reworks, thinking, well, I didn't place my horns in the right area or my mouth, or thinking that it was still on my creation aspect that was hindering me, before I had that same realization that we're all discussing now, that it just didn't matter at some point. I started having to try to sneakily single out members from herds that were like hanging together. I would like try to like I put the poison spitters on, and I would like shoot from afar, and then after they all like ran to me, I'd run away until like they stopped following and there was one still lingering, and I'd run up and then kill it.
Yeah, I felt like about 5 minutes, 10 minutes into this, I was like, yeah, no, I get it. And then the rest of the stage felt like a little bit of a slog. But I mean, this really where like the creature creator should shine, and I feel like the bulk of the game should be, but it's hindered by all those things we mentioned.
I feel like mentioning too, like the playstyle difference between being a carnivore and herbivore. Like I'm sure there are disadvantages and advantages, and as you go through later, I know your playstyle affects like perks that you get. but I found at least that in the creature stage, being an herbivore is worlds easier. Like,
yeah, it's easier, but I think it's more boring too, right?
Well, you know what? It's funny. I don't know. To be honest, because the fights are not fights, they are, in my opinion, even worse than the dances. Because with the dances, at least, they're doing one of 4 things. So they're like, number 2.
It's a
and you're like, okay,
game, yeah.
number 2. And then they're like, number 3. And you're like, oh, I'm really good at number 3s. That's awesome. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm a real poser. But like, in the fights, literally, it was like, okay, I have, what's it called when you click on something? A cooldown. So I'm like, I have 4 cooldowns, and all I'm doing is going 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 3, 3, 3, 2, 2, 2. All my ones back up, and then I'm like, I won, I guess. Like, it didn't. There was no like anything. I didn't think tactically during that. Like, other than to do something that like Carley did. I did that once where I was like, you know, like I'll be far away and I'll be like, blah, 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 you know, like, and then they come up and I'm like, no, I'm gonna punch you, you know, like that was it. Like that was the only tactic would be like, I'm gonna stand far enough away and get spitty a few times first, but like
it's like you got to rebuild your creature to do that, which is a thing you can do, which is kind of weird. Like the one thing that will probably stand out to you is like, okay, I'm gonna evolve, and I find my mate with my cell phone, and I create the new egg. But then when you zoom out, like after you're done with the creature creator, it's like, wait, mom and dad already look like the creature I just created, even though I just completely recolored him. I added new things, but for what you're talking about, for the sake of like oh, I didn't have a level 3 singing on there, so you can just go back to your creature creator and swap your mouths around and stuff, and there isn't a lot of permanence, I guess is what I'm saying. It's, I mean, you can completely revamp your character, and there are things that carry from stage to stage. Yeah, until you get to tribe stage. And there are things that carry from stage to stage that affect, like Tom, you were saying, like if you choose to be an herbivore or carnivore, and there's different things that affect the later stages. But for the most part, like you can just create an entirely new creature whenever you want while you're in this stage.
There's also, I get my last little thing on this is they also have this really annoying thing where sometimes after you change, they'll be like, we moved nests. Like that's how they and like that journey
I think it has to happen
can be awful. Like that journey, especially if like honestly anything, but if you're just running into things that are mad at you and you're like not that fast, you're like, oh, you're gonna fucking die. Like that's all that's gonna happen is like, I am not faster than these 10 things that are pissed at me, and you'll do a siren song and like one of them will be like, I didn't hear you, and you're like, no, and they'll kill you, and then you like start back in the nest again. You're like, son of a bitch. Like,
with that being said, I don't feel like there's ever like, we're talking about like the evolution of your species that you've taken from a cell. Like I really want something to be on the line here, and I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure there's no way for you like to end your species. I feel like that should be like on the table, you know, to have some higher stakes. There should be a hardcore spore mode where like it's possible like for you not to respawn anymore.
Well, if you die during tribal, it'll say your tribe died, but you go back in time to fix that.
Oh, okay.
So it kind of says it, but it never actually ends.
Does it just eventually stop giving you DNA in the cell stage, and you can't like just collect DNA and add more stuff to your creature?
I thought that's what happened, but I might be wrong. I thought that once
think it does, because I'm in the last stage and it just keeps popping up with evolve legs and go to land, and I'm like, no, I want to stay a cell.
I want to add 1,000 spikes.
Right, so if you kill or whatever you eat, I don't think you get more points, right?
No, that's what I'm saying. Is I think I've maxed out on my points.
Yeah, you get. It's crazy. It's like they create this level, and then for some reason, like they ice you out of it.
Yeah,
like what? Why?
Like you have to go play the game that we want you to play, and I'm like, no.
Wouldn't it be fun that if someone loved that level, like why wouldn't you just allow someone to be like, hey, you want to sink 6 hours into that level and just be like. The most badass multi-celled organism like in the whole ocean, like do it, have fun, like and there's no reason, like that's not even like, oh, we didn't have the technology. It's like the game's there already. You just stopped giving me points. Like why?
Stop giving me points, and you could have added in so many more types of weapons and whatnot. I think a good example of a game that sticks with that and has the same kind of gameplay, but is also evolution based, is Ancestor. I was playing that for a little bit, like a year or two ago, and you have to like slowly evolve and do your primate. It stays on that level. Like you do get control over like a herd, and you can kind of control who reproduces, and you can bring more primates into your family. But if your character dies, you just move on to a different one, and it's one that's named and it's there, but you always stay as like an individual, and you can jump from different one to different one, but it never loses its scope. You know what I mean? Right. It's the same type of game. And as you continue on with each new generation, you keep certain like things that you evolved, and you have to actually like evolve the ability to like hold something in your hand, and then you have to evolve the ability to hold something in your other hand, and then you have to evolve the ability to pass something between the hands.
I never played it, and I like I said, I'm in love with like the concept of these games. Like I think it's so cool. Did you beat Ancestors? Like, did you get like that's another one that I started and got into another game, but I absolutely loved it, and it's one that I'm absolutely gonna return to. So could you like, let's say, sorry, I know I'm like quizzing you, but if you and I played, is it possible that we would have very different arcs of like evolution, or is it kind of linear? Because I guess with it just being
somewhat linear, like there is a controlled path, and it there's nothing like, you know, you're not going to like evolve spikes or do this or that. It is like a linear kind of story-based game. You can go through it more aggressive. It still is one level above the cell level. Like I would basically say it's a full version of like the first land level. I don't know, you know, you don't ever move into a house. I think you don't ever like, you know, hey honey, I'm home, and throw something on the stove. But you do like learn to build a hut or protect yourself, or, you know, I think you can start fire. You can absolutely start fire. You can make a poison a stick and fight off a lion with it, or a tiger or whatever.
Yeah, I just showed the kind of evolution neuron tree.
And
that is the skill tree in that game.
Different things stay with your clan, I think it's called, as the generations go on, and certain things you lose, and you can kind of shape the way that goes.
Yeah, that's for $16 on Steam right now. And,
absolutely worth it.
Pick up that bad boy. Real quick, you guys. So a frog had his DNA tested. Turns out he was part Irish, part British, and a tadpole. It's okay.
Gosh, I hear another one of those, I'm gonna croak.
You know, between that and the other one, I'll move you up to a -9, Tom. Right there. So taking a break from the stage.
This will be a slog.
Yeah, it's gonna be a slog, like the creature stage. So this game, in context, it came out in 2008. So it was GTA 4 came out, Fallout 3, Little Big Planet, Call of Duty World at War, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Metal Gear Solid 4, Sons of the Guns of the Patriots, or whatever it was called, and Mario Kart Wii, Dead Space, Battlefield Bad Company, God of War 2, or not God of War, Gears of War 2, Mirror's Edge, Left 4 Dead, Devil May Cry 4, and World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King. So
the Lich
King.
It was a good year for games.
Yeah, it was really, really good year. Lots of stuff. So, and Spore, you know, had a lot of hype up as well. But so, yeah, there's some other peers. The next stage is the tribal stage. But I did want to pause for a second here, because that's like, this is where the creature creator kind of stops mattering, like we talked about. And I think the creature creator does deserve a special mention. We talked about it a little bit, and about a lot of negatives about the game, but like, let's talk about the creature creator tool that they have here. You guys think it works well?
Wonderful.
Any gripes about it?
It's
amazing.
Love it?
Okay.
I
love it too. Yeah,
love it. I have made some of my first creature or two were very like, I found myself falling into like this is like what I'm going to be making, and so the third one I was just like, let's go ham, and I threw backwards crooked legs on that thing. It's got like an eye where the tail's supposed to be. It's just wild.
The way that Spore interacts with the internet community, there's an article that I'll cite later that Will Wright, the designer or the lead developer of this game, did a good job of explaining. He says that it's not like a massively parallel multiplayer game like World of Warcraft where everyone's acting at the same time. What Spore is a massively parallel single player game. So you enable your internet connectivity and the Spore servers will pollinate your copy of the game with content created by other players, which is pretty clever from like a development perspective because like they make the engine, which is no small task. It's amazing that they have this thing that works as well as they do, and it encourages you to be creative and to create these weird creatures. But you save your creatures and they go onto the Sporepedia and they're downloaded onto other players' games. So when you're running around your universe, if it needs a carnivore creature for your world for its ecosystem, it will look online, and there's ways you can choose like what worlds you're grabbing from. There's things called Sporecasts in their community, and you can tell it to grab creatures from like your friends lists and stuff. And when you create a second creature, you'll very likely run into your own creatures in the world as well that you've created before.
So you're saying that someone could be looking at my grustations right now?
Yes. Wow. Yeah, if they, I don't know the exact ways that you need to be linked, and the way the EA account functions and stuff in 2021 has changed a little bit so that you're like openly accessible so other people can download you. But like if I have you on my friends list, for sure I would be able to make sure your creatures are loaded into my world and people could download. You can kind of like manually download creatures from the Sporepedia, which I'll show on stream right here. So I'm looking at the Sporepedia right now and the featured section. So here is a Dragon Zolox King. It's a giant like mantis creature looking thing that's highly rated, and I could download this and put it in my own catalog and load it whenever I want. You can manually put them in, but also while you're in the game, you can just do searches for them and grab things that you need to, which later on in the game when you need to do things like buildings, you may feel less inspired and just grab things from the catalog, which is perfectly fine. So yeah, the creature creator and the 3D creator, which we'll talk about a little bit later, are some pretty big aspects, if not the entire backbone and main feature of this game, in my opinion. Next is the tribal stage. So the creatures, they collect enough DNA by dancing at each other or singing or eating each other to get enough DNA to gain sentience. And there's a little sequence where it's the recreation of 2001 Space Odyssey with the stick, and they become more advanced and they become a tribe. Carly, you want to take a stab at explaining the tribal stage?
Oh gosh, I don't know that I'm gonna do it justice, because I'll be honest, I didn't do well in this stage.
Yeah.
I played it for quite a while and I enjoyed it much more than the creature stage. So you go from a cell to a creature to now you're a cognizant like tribal
society.
Creature. That's tribal society. Yeah. Yes, thank you. And you wear armor and you have tents and you can domesticate other creatures to be your animals. So it was a big jump, the animation sequence going from creature stage to tribal shows you creating fire and then dancing around, and then suddenly like you have a staff in your hand that looks pretty ornate. So it jumped straight from like, oh, we created fire to now have a staff and I'm tribal society. And there's other tribes in your close proximity. You can either attack them, you can gift things to them to try to win their favor, produce more of your own species at the same time to grow your herd. So that's the gist of it. My first biggest complaint about this stage is the camera angle was so awful. I don't know how we went from the directional and camera angles of creature stage to this absolute garbage that is tribal stage. I don't understand.
It was like a third-person camera following behind the creature, and now that you're controlling a tribe, not just one creature at a time, it's this movable kind of RTS camera. Yeah, it's tough to find the right place because depending on your world, there can be a lot of trees, and it's like the trees are always in the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
In order to overthrow a tribe, you have to kill all of the tribe members, and then whatever buildings or structures they have built, you have to tear those down. And So for example, I think that this one tribe in particular had like the average health was like 100 HP. And then the buildings would have like 300, and they had three different buildings. And so my tribe of 6 went over there, killed their tribe, and then started attacking the buildings. But the game is auto-spawning more tribe members to rebuild the fallen tribe while you're attacking the building. And I don't know. I couldn't get past it. There was just a big roadblock there. But and anytime I would actually make progress on it, I would get a notification that an incoming attack was happening. Your food is being raided. I look at my mini map, and there's a different tribe that's taken advantage of me being away from my campsite and is now attacking to steal my resources. So I'd have to like scurry on back over there and try to defend my area.
Yeah, there's some weird balance things going on with this mode, and I didn't realize it until I was reading someone else talking about it, but it's every other tribe against you. Like, they don't attack each other. They are all against you, and they will steal your food. The wild animals will also steal your food. So the odds are really stacked against you in this mode. There's a bunch of things that are kind of hidden that'll make it easier, like the fact that if you build the RTS part of this game is like you have 6 slots around your tribe, and you can build a few different buildings that you will unlock, and then you're trying to constantly gather food, be it the fruit if you're an herbivore, or other meat, and that'll allow you to make more babies, and that's also your points that you can use to build buildings. But like one of them is fire torches, and if you equip your people with that, that's excellent at destroying buildings, so that'll make that go by a lot faster. The axes are better at destroying creatures, and also most people who like love this game will always be allied with another creature when they go into this stage, and that gives you like they're domesticated behind your hut, like you said, and that's just kind of an infinite supply of food that will always be there for you. So there's all these like weird tricks that make this stage easier, but just going into it, it's like it's difficult, and it takes what feels like way too long to slowly destroy all of their huts.
Yeah.
Or befriend them all, which is what I did.
Befriend them all. Oh, I guess you could do that as well. If you get out the didgeridoos and go sing at them, that's always an option.
Didgeridoos, wooden flutes, and maracas.
Do some more Simon Says with your pacifist run.
Social on one of my characters in the creature stage that I could like sing and dance and charm and pose, and I was doing all kinds of stuff. But I didn't realize that you needed to do that with 6 other people around you.
That definitely helps.
So it's like going up like a little smidgen, and then having 6 of those little guys around me while I do my little dance helped.
Your backup dancers.
So
yeah, I got to experience that just by looking over at Hunter's screen, because I made a grand total of 0 friends in every stage of this game as I played. That was
Did you play a carnivore?
I did, but I was still trying to befriend some of them, and nobody wanted to be my friend. So when you're exiting creature stage and going into tribal, it gives you this kind of breakdown of your species' characteristics. And mine said like ultimate predator or something, because I had 0 friends.
Just killed everybody.
I didn't.
That's what my first one was.
That's all she could do. That's all she understood. Just murder.
It's a murder
if
machine.
they weren't going to be my
Just
friends,
murder.
they were going to be my lunch. So I tried.
I don't know. The tribal stage, I feel like I maybe enjoyed this one the least. It's the same as the creature stage, but with a shift in RTS. Just you run around to the different creatures and tribes, and you get the top-down view, like we said, and you're just kind of stockpiling food. And the main thing that stood out to me in this mode, though, and it's on stream right now, is the pathfinding. Your fucking creatures cannot follow instructions for the life of them. You tell them, I thought like I would select 3 of them. Okay, you 3 grab the food, and they just sort of all wobble around the thing that they're trying to create, and one gets it, and then he just stands in the way and he won't move. I'm like, okay, well, I'll select one creature, just one creature. Go put the food in our food storage, and they just start walking the opposite direction. They get hooked on a tree, and they sort of just wobble around some more. And you just really, you take the pathfinding in games like StarCraft and Warcraft really for granted, and until you see something like this, it's just I don't know if it has to do with the creature design, but
and And the spacing. So, like, when you have them collect food and then go place the food, they have to do this big, they walk up to it and then they back up and they do this, like, large turn and then so if you
pull out, like, a little butler thing and they're like, I've brought you your food today, sir.
So, and it just...
We're cultured now.
It's cute, I guess, but when you have... mine was like a herd of 6 that I was trying to control, and I just killed a whole herd of creatures, so they've all got little plates in their hands, and I've selected them all to go and deposit the food in the food storage, and they get tangled up on each other.
And they're just walking at like half speed back to your base. And the attacking is just as bad, because you got to select all of them. You're like, I want to attack this one guy. Well, okay. All 8 of them are going to try and attack this guy at once, but only one of them is actually attacking. And then, okay, you're trying to attack a group. Well, you can't do that. You're going to have to select a couple of them to attack this one and a couple to attack that one. Like there's an attack area button in StarCraft and Warcraft for a reason, It's they didn't get into intricacies of what makes this kind of game work well. Instead, it's like you're still supposed to be amazed by, here is my creature, and my creature that I have designed is doing these things, which is cool, but it just falls flat to the gameplay, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
What you were talking about earlier with trying to destroy an enemy village, like I've got my 6 guys surrounding their hut, and half of them aren't even doing an animation. I'm just staring at the HP bar of the hut. It's like, it's ticking down. There's one guy sort of wobbling on the side, and it's like, where's all the animation? Where they're using their cool axes or their stingers on them or anything, It's just kind of void of all that detail that you want.
And if it says that there's 9 of them in that group and I kill 9,
they're all extinct.
They're all extinct? Why are they regenerating in the middle of their campgrounds?
Yeah.
Like they just appear out of nothing. They weren't.
Yeah.
There was no 2 of them left to reproduce. I've killed them.
They were in the hut.
One. No, it
so.
said that there was a total of 9, and there's 9 dead creature
It was
bodies.
9 that you could see.
And then a baby appears.
You didn't see the ones in the hut.
There's 9 and then 2 breeders
inside the hut. Yeah.
I've been pregnant for 22 years.
Oh no!
All I know is breeding.
Oh Jesus!
Oh hey guys, I have a friend. His job involves cloning the DNA of trains. I don't know if you knew this was a thing, but I just call him a genetic engineer. I ranked them when I put them in my notes, so they're only going to get worse.
Oh, I was going to ask you progressively better or worse.
Chris, come on, man. Like, can we get back on track?
Because of the trains. It's okay. We're losing steam.
Tom, not always good, but always quick.
Yeah.
I'm going for speed. That's it.
All right, fine. Since you're in the negatives, Tom, I'll give you -8 there. All right.
Yay.
Hooray. The God game category, since that's what this is like primarily in. It is not particularly new. It has varying levels of depth. Populous is very much considered like the progenitor of this genre. It's the first one. It is a 1989 game. It is an isometric kind of SimCity style game, but you are a god in that game, and it looks like an early SimCity builder. You've got divine powers. It was created by the famous or infamous Peter Molyneux, which I watched a video of earlier, and you pronounce his name Molyneux, not Molyneux. So he was with Bullfrog Productions.
Way. I have mine.
Yeah, and EA Publishing. It has several sequels. And then Black and White was, I always forget when that game came out. Black and White came out in 2001, which is pretty early. And
when did Spore come out?
2008. So
okay. Wow. Black and White's so much better.
Black and White. So Tom, you were saying you don't really like Black and White, though, right?
Really?
I mean, my experience with it. I felt like. I mean, Chris and I were joking about it. I don't know, you guys, if everyone's familiar with it or not, but essentially, you're God, but you have a giant like kaiju, basically. It's like either like a cow or a tiger or a lion. Or like an orangutan, and like it's almost like half Tamagotchi, like take care of your kaiju, but also you have like villagers that are trying to do stuff, and like I don't know, my experience is that like and maybe I don't know, I lack patience, so I don't know, but like my experience is that like I'd be like, okay, kaiju, we're going to treat villagers with respect and we want them to revere us. So we're going to be nice to them. And they'd be like, but I can eat one? And you'd be like, no, Kaiju. But like the only way that you can like, the only way that you can like tell them not to do something is to literally beat them. And it felt so wrong to be like, stupid cow, stupid, like just beat. Yeah, and like I didn't like that. Like, so I'm not doing it. You know what I mean? Like my cow eats a villager and everyone's like, oh my God. And then you're like, oh, everyone, it's okay. Like, am I going to discipline him? No. But I'm going to reward the hell out of him when he does not eating you. Okay? Like, we're going to roll with that. And like, the cow's just like, I don't know, like the algorithm's just like, so I can eat people sometimes. And that's just it. And my villagers are just like, so we're half terrified of our leader. And like, I don't know, it's just like, it just felt like miserable as a result. And like, I don't know, it quickly for me, I realized that like, just like being evil and kind of like encouraging evil was like the safe and easy path. You might have someone in danger, so you can like lift a single villager off the ground, and you might be tempted to be like, you're like, here, little villager, let me place you over here. And then like on accident, because it's like so subtle, you like let them go at the rate of like 400 miles an hour. And so you let them go and they're like, like, so can you imagine that? Can you imagine like being like a god and you're like trying to like build a relationship with these people and they're like, God, Sally, the flood, it's gonna get her. And then you see like Sally lift up off the ground and everyone's like, oh. Sally just like flies at 1,000 miles an hour and like slams into a huge mountain and is dead. And you're like, you're not gonna be like, thank you, God. You're like, ah! Like, I don't know. That was my experience with the game. It's just like being a god, but like sucking at it, like just not doing a good job at it. And like my animals not listening to me and ended up being an absolute terror. And that was my experience. So
as I'm watching the gameplay, I'm reminded like so much of what this was like. Looking at this game, and you were able to like build the buildings wherever you wanted to. Here's the grain, and you can like pick up the grain. Black and White did really well was not exposing the seams of the game, like the engine behind the game. Like it felt so much more freeform, and because of that, things could really go off the rails, like what you're describing, Tom. With Spore, it just feels like it's so in a box. The creature creator isn't. You can do amazing things with the aesthetics of that, but the rest of the gameplay is like so defined by the box that it's in. Mm-hmm.
Now, Black and White 2, boy. I mean, that was the one I really played more. I played more of Black and White 2 than Black and White 1. Yeah. But man, Black and White 2, shit.
Is it good? I don't know if I played Black and White 2. I don't know if I knew Black and White 2 existed.
I like the animals better in it. Because you could have a turtle.
Yeah.
And the graphics were a little bit better.
For sure.
And I think the controls were a little bit more refined. I mean, you could still sometimes just throw a motherfucker for no reason. But God, you know what I mean? But also, the other thing in Black and White 2, you fought another god.
Right.
So you were warring with another god. And like he would like throw like a fireball at you and you could fucking catch it and throw, you know what I mean? So it was like, it was pretty fun.
Yeah.
It was also really hard to play on any modern computer. Like it just won't work. Like Bob bought a new copy and still couldn't get it to work on his computer. You know, because you had to do the run as a Windows, whatever. It's just, you know, unfortunately, Lionhead Studios was bought up by Microsoft and they just don't give a fuck.
I know that you would draw your spells and that, or at least I think that you, and like, man, I was so bad at that for some reason. Like, you know, like some event would happen and I'd be like, don't worry, here comes my spell. And it'd be like, no, it's nothing. No, it's nothing. I'd be like, hold on, everyone. Like I said, I was just an incompetent god. That's what it was. Like, it just made me feel like I sucked. And like in certain terms, instead of like escapism, you know, like I'm at school Like, I'm like, nah, I just had like a real, like, look, I'm not the cool kid. I go home on the bus. I'm like, man, they suck. And then I'm like, maybe I'll be like a god. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm equally bad at that. Like,
can't figure that out.
Also a bad god.
Jesus Christ, Tom.
All right, so there's a couple more Spore games. Like I said, then, so Black and White 2 came out in 2005, and then comes out Spore in 2008. Some couple more ones that have come out since then. From Dust was it was a very good god game that took, I think, some of what worked in. It was a lot more.
Loved that, by the way.
Yeah.
If you guys have not played From Dust, that game is a ton of fun.
It has to do with like, it's more like terraforming focus.
That's strictly
on this,
it. Like, it's
and fun.
It's basically like a puzzle game where your tribesmen are trying to get from like point A to point B, and
you can move sand or water around
and there's
to
like
reshape the environment. Yeah,
these huge. I thought it was really fun.
Yeah, and that's available on modern consoles, usually an arcade kind of game. Another one is Reus, Reus, in 2013. That was I played that a little bit. Pretty fun arcade game that you can find on consoles. Goddess from 2013, again by Peter Molyneux, and this is a weird one because it started as a Kickstarter, which a huge developer like him, there was some controversy like, should someone like that do that, or should they just get the funding that they can obviously get? Opened as an early access in 2013, but since then it seems to have released all its main contractors, and it's still in early access. Kind of some negative atmosphere.
Like it might still come out?
Yeah, but they've released all of their developers and there's no development happening on it. But like, you can buy it on Steam and it's still marked as early access, even though there's no development happening.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's very basic looking graphics that we're showing here, but there's some other genres that this game Spore definitely fits into, but it depends on what stage you're looking at. At the beginning, it's like an arcade kind of snake game at the beginning, and then kind of a casual action game in the creature phase, and a casual RTS and tribal. And as we're talking about, it's going to move into an RTS in civilization stage, kind of a like the game Civilization style civilization game, and then and finally it's going to be an exploration economic kind of resource game. But let's talk about that next stage, Civilization stage. Hunter, did you get to that?
Nope.
You said that's the one you didn't get to?
So I'll
Frank,
explain
did you get
anyways.
to that? Well, if you can explain the game Civilization, you could probably explain it.
Is the next stage basically like Civ 5?
It's aptly named the Civ stage, and you're looking to conquer the planet that you're on. You're now looking at a planet view by dealing with all the other civilizations, and you have 3 ways to do this. You can do it through religious, economic, or military means. And this stage also introduces its version of city planning, along with the creator tool again, so that you can craft buildings and vehicles. The cities are in proximity of geysers that, of course, emit spice, which you'll have to control. You got to control that spice to make sure it make money. That is the means in this stage.
Like from
to get
Dune.
more vehicles. Exactly. And you can create trade routes and use your abilities to influence the other civilizations until you control the planet. If you got
I'm doing Civilization right now, and it's just kind of basic RTS. It's more, I guess it's more like Civilization, that game, because you talk to other they're all your race now at this point. Everyone's your own race.
Yeah, because you've killed all the other ones. Yeah.
Yeah, or you just become the dominant species, and everyone else is still just like an animal, but you're the one that's the equivalent of humans.
Did they have like a different dev team for each part of this game? Why didn't they just like pick
it does
one
feel that
game
way sometimes
and go hard into it, sell that one, make money off of it, and then do the next one in a different style, and then the next one, because like they're not full-fledged, like we've talked about the flaws or whatever, but they all have like a slightly similar feel, but there's just such wildly different gameplay. And
I think that's supposed to be the appeal of it, but I mean, we'll talk more about it in our closing notes, but in my opinion, it just does everything kind of poorly. And,
like a jack of all trades.
Master of none. Yeah. And what should be the core thread is like, this is my species. You really got to be invested in like Tom, you were saying, like that childlike wonder of being so invested in your own creature that you've created your own lore in your head for. But like, maybe that would carry you through. Like you're so hyped about your creature. And in research for this game, I watched people like do these kind of like thematic story builds of your creature, and like that's entertaining, like you create a backstory for your creature and why they're doing things this way. Like that works, sure, but when you're playing it like as a game, it loses steam pretty quickly.
I thought I had some.
I wish I had gotten to this stage. I've been playing settlement survival So I would have been into building a little civilization here, but
It's really cool because you make your buildings too.
Oh.
Yeah. So you get the creator tool, and you can build. So there's 3 different buildings. There's the town center. So I made mine a giant trash can, and then you can build houses. You can build an entertainment center, the factory, and the turrets. I don't think you can design. You just pop those on the side. But then also immediately you'll need to design a vehicle, and when you unlock it, you'll be able to design a seacraft and then an airplane. And I think part of the flaw with this stage is that, like, right from the get-go, it's like, okay, well, design your town hall. It's like, okay, I'm into that. I'll do that right away. And it's like, okay, now design your vehicle. It's like, okay, well, I just designed something, but okay, I'll design the landcraft. And then, like, within like 5 minutes from each other, you're being asked to design each thing after another. And if you're really invested in the lore of the story that you're creating, okay, but like I wanted to try out the gameplay and stuff, and I kept being bogged down from it pausing me and going, be creative right now. And you can go back and change them if you want. So it's not like you're committing to anything here.
I just feel like the same person isn't gonna like each stage. Like, I can't imagine that there's somebody that like, oh, this is like the gameplay that I like, or this is like the gameplay that I like, or this fluidly designing a creature versus like engineering and like.
Hey, you're not making one good game, you're making 5 subpar games.
Yeah.
So what's interesting, and what some of what I've heard is that like it has a very easy level of entrance, right? Unless it's things like we talked about, some of the weird imbalance things like in the tribal stage where for whatever reason like it takes forever to conquer the other tribe, then it becomes bogged down and isn't fun anymore. But I think a lot of these have a lot of easy access, so that someone who's not familiar with games, perhaps the kind of person who would have, like, the only game they've ever played is The Sims before, that they could pop into Spore, and they're not familiar with Civ, they're not familiar with action, like wandering around World of Warcraft style game, like that the actions, the pop-up abilities are like in the creature stage. So all of it is shallow, but maybe that does make a good point of entry for someone who's not super familiar with games either. So like the Civilization stage, I love the game Civilization, and many times have I been in the position thinking just one more round in Civilization, and then hours have passed and the sun has set and rises again. Yeah. What we have here is the most bastardized version of Civilization within the Spore universe. Like it does not work great for me. Like I'm looking on stream right now of their version of the city planner, which is like they have the system of like if you place this building next to this building, it works better. But like it's plots of land that you can put 3 different buildings on, and that is not a very in-depth Civ version, like a Civilization style game. And this isn't turn-based either. It's all kind of real-time strategy. Yeah, like I said, you have the ability to create your buildings, which you get to put your own touch on your creatures, again, your alien race. If that's what you love about this game, then there's lots more opportunities for it there. For me, the novelty of like I'm going to run over to this civilization and launch my trash can cars with their missiles attacking the other buildings. I got bored of it pretty quickly, but there's different ways to play it, like doing the religious propaganda or establishing trade routes and kind of dominating the planet using economic means. But hey, you guys want to hear a potassium joke?
Yeah.
Okay. Potassium is K. I'm a periodic table. Okay.
No.
Anyway, let's talk about the developer publisher a bit. Maxis was started in 1987, and it was founded by Jeff Braun, kind of the investor, and Will Wright, the mind, who you've probably heard of. He founded the studio and published their first game, pretty much created it mostly on his own, SimCity. It was released multiple times throughout the years, but that little game went on to become one of the most popular games of all time. Continued their success with SimCity 2000, which was actually released in 1994, and they entered a period of doing too many things. They released a game called Robo Sport, Sim Ant, which I love. Sim Ant, I owned that one. It's what it sounds like. It's a Sim Ant game, and it's great. And they also did Sim Earth, Sim Life, L-Fish, Rome, Pathway to Power, Sim Farm, Unnatural Selection, Sim Health, Sim Tower, Wrath of the Gods, Sim Copter, Sim Golf, Sim Tunes, Sim Safari, that's a hard one to say, and they did create the game Full Tilt Pinball, which had the level Space Cadet, which you've probably played. It was preloaded on every like Windows Plus, NT 2000 ME, or Windows XP operating system. So anyway, in the midst of releasing all those games, they were losing money, and they went up for acquisition in 1997. They teamed up with the greatest developer of all time, Electronic Arts. And Maxis at the time was valued at $125 million. Jeff Braun, the investor, took a payout, and Will Wright continued to work with them, even though half the Maxis staff was laid off. They finished SimCity 3000, and they pitched the idea to EA of The Sims, which was met with a lot of skepticism because they didn't want a dollhouse-style game. They didn't think it would do well in the video game market, but Will Wright had created SimCity, and that had some power behind it, and they saw potential for lucrative expansions. So they decided to back The Sims, which turned out to be a good choice because that was released in February of 2000, and it would be Maxis's focus for the next 6 years. And it, needless to say, had a little bit of success with The Sims. But after all that success, Will Wright began working on this game Spore, which was announced 3 years before it came out, which is usually not a great sign to like stemming expectations. So the final stage, Galactic, did anyone get to it and is comfortable enough to explain what the stage is?
I did the first time I played this game years and years ago, but I did not this time around. Okay. But I remember it being kind of just like the Civilization, just but in space to some extent.
Civilization in space. Okay. Yeah, you conquer your planet and you create a spacecraft and you are able to zoom out. The potential at this point really opens up. It's hard to see like where your limit of exploration ends. You've got what looks like thousands of star systems in view, each of these housing a handful of planets. You can zoom in on your planet that you start on. You can see all the bases that you just did in the civilization mode. So I will say, like, this is a very good thing where they, for once, didn't erase what you had done in the previous mode. You can see everything that you did and even continue to edit the cities. Like, you can still do the city planning stage while you're in this galactic stage. And what you're doing is going around to the different planets, producing spice. You can zip around to the other planets and found bases and produce different kinds of spice. Each planet has a Terra score about how inhabitable it is, and you can actually modify the planets by dropping devices on there that will like increase its atmosphere, heat it up, cool it down, and you can bring animals and plants that were established on other planets into the planet that you're working on to help stabilize its Terra score. That'll help it house more colonies and produce more spice. Meanwhile, you're using your funds to trade with other alien races. Some are by default super aggressive, some are friendly, some are religious, some are distrusting. You can do missions for them, give them gifts, make allies. And at this point, like I said, it's really open-ended to the end of the game, kind of how far you want to go. There is a mission that's kind of continuing about traveling to the center of the galaxy, which sounds a little reminiscent to another game that we may have done on Garbage Game Night. But to me, like, this is where the game works for me, and maybe this speaks to the kind of game that you like. To me, giving me the creature creator tool is cool and I love it, but like I don't want to spend all my time in the creature creator. I want like a task to do. It's odd that this part of the game has absolutely nothing to do with the creature builder, which is on face value like the main asset of this game. But this is kind of the part that I enjoy the most, running around and doing the missions, zipping all the way down to like the planet level of maybe an enemy planet, and you have a mission to steal an artifact on that planet, so you suck it up with your ray. And you're just trying to make more funds to improve your spaceship and venture further and further into the galaxy. I think this is really where the game shines for me, in my opinion. But
did anyone else experience in the creature stage spaceships?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I had wondered at the time because I knew it was going to become something later on. I actually saw one suck up one of the creatures that was like around me, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Yeah.
Yeah. They do a couple things to tie it into like showing like this is part of the bigger world. I think like in the cell stage in the background, you can see creatures that are much larger than you, right? They kind of trying to continue that trend by like, here's a hint at the future. There are other civilizations out there with spacecrafts, which is cool. And that's something that you can do in this galactic stage is to, go to planets and they'll have creatures on them that aren't sentient. You can suck them up in your beam and drop them on other planets because you want to establish the Terra score for that planet. That's something that I think it's kind of buried in here, but it's one of the more in-depth features of this game is the terror score of any planet. You can go to any planet and it'll have a T0 score. That means like if there's no atmosphere, it's either way too cold or way too hot. And it's like, okay, well, your ship is equipped with it. You can use like a ray to adjust the temperature or the atmosphere, or you can drop these devices on it to adjust it bunches at a time. And then it'll tell you like, well, to improve it to T1 score, you're going to need a medium plant, a small plant, a large plant, 2 herbivores, and an omnivore or a carnivore. So you got to, like, in your storehold of your ship, you got to go to a planet, suck up all those things and drop them on that planet. And you are actually terraforming this planet. So you can spend lots of time in like crafting these planets in your solar system, creating these pit stops for you with these friendly people so you can travel around the system. You could spend as much time as you want in this because, like I said, there are thousands of different little galaxies here that you can zoom all the way in on. And these are all procedurally generated. And this in itself is just a gigantic leap from what games were able to do at the time. Like I said, this is kind of open-ended. If you want to stop playing as soon as like you make relations in a biblical way with another alien species, you can stop there. But like I said, there's a mission to get to the center. If you were to play that out, there's ways to cheese it. But if you were to play it out to like become a strong civilization and make it to the center of the galaxy, and part of like the story thing is there's the Groks at the center of the galaxy, and there's a huge network of one alien race that will attack you no matter what. But if you were to make your way to the center of the galaxy, time-wise, I think you would spend about 97% of your time in the galaxy mode. It really is just so much time that it would take to properly finish this mode. And it's odd that this, I don't think that's what people think of when they think of Spore. Right?
And you throw everything away in this mode, right? Like everything you've done previously.
It matters what you've created. Yeah, there are a couple things that factor into how you start, like how people treat you, if you like choices that you've made as a carnivore in like the first stages, they continue to affect you. But there are even resets at this point where you can kind of overcome those things that you were on the cell stage and on the creature stage.
I feel like I would like this stage, but getting to this stage, like this is the thing. This should have been the game. Like,
yeah, and once you make your way through it, you can start on whatever stage that you want. But yeah, it is odd to, like we're saying, there's different gameplay styles here. And for me, I appreciate the creature creator, but less interested in it. This is what I really enjoyed. And yeah, you bury it in there for people who are looking for it.
This reminds me of Stellaris, which is basically civilization in space. And
right.
I played a lot of that one.
Yeah, and on a very... certainly No Man's Sky was inspired by things that Spore was doing. But the focus is definitely different too. I mean, No Man's Sky starts on this stage for one, but it's focused on way more different resource management. But
like we were talking about before, it pulls it down to like the individual level, whereas this one, keeps pulling away. In
this stage in Spore, for all intents and purposes, you are a spaceship now.
Yeah.
You are not your home is these creatures that you developed a long time ago, but you are now a spaceship. You don't leave the spaceship or anything. It's just you are now this craft.
And that's a shame.
All right, so that is the last stage in this game. I want to go back and show you guys a couple things on the Twitch stream right now. So this is the first Spore trailer this is like the main launch trailer for 2008. Real quick on some more of the people behind this. So like I said, this is of course the brainchild of Will Wright, the head designer original of SimCity. Here's what the original SimCity, actually this one was in 1984 on the Amiga. There was an interview he did with the New Yorker in 2006 called Game Master. Focus was on the upcoming game Spore, and he had some things to say about like how games fit into the learning space. And if you'll allow me just for a second to get profound and read a little bit from that article, I thought it was pretty interesting. So one day in his office, Wright showed me an email he had received from Laura M. Brown, a professor of political science at California State University, Channel Islands, in response to an essay he had written for Wired about the educational value of video games. So Brown said, who uses technology in her own teaching, she wrote, "Most of us are in agreement that this younger generation raised on video games has learned to be reactive instead of active. And worse, they have lost their imaginative abilities and creativity because the games provide all of the images, sounds, and possible outcomes for them. Our students tend not to know how to initiate questions, formulate hypotheses, or lead off a debate because they like to wait and see what comes at them. They also have difficulty imagining worlds, places, and/or historical times unless you, as a professor, can provide them with a picture and a sound to go along with the words. In essence, they seem to have lost the ability to visualize with their minds. Wright thought, in response to this, the article goes on to say, Wright, though, believes that games teach you how to learn. What needs to change is the way children are taught. He says, but the problem with our education system is we've taken this kind of narrow, reductionist, Aristotelian approach. Hey, Tom, philosophy major, Aristotelian? How's that sound?
Oh wow, yeah. I don't know if I've ever
Aristotelian
that sounds awful, but
learning is. He told me it's not designed for experimenting. He's talking about the education system. It's not designed for experimenting with complex systems and navigating your way through them in an intuitive way, which is what games teach. It's not really designed for failure. He's talking about the learning system, which is also something games teach. I mean, I think that failure is a better teacher than success. Trial and error, reverse engineering stuff in your mind. All the ways that kids interact with games, that's the kind of thinking schools should be teaching. And I would argue that as the world becomes more complex and as outcomes become less about success or failure, games are better at preparing you. The education system is going to realize this sooner or later. It's starting. Teachers are entering the system who grew up playing games. They're going to want to engage the kids using games. So, he's talking about using games as a learning system, about an environment in which you can learn, you can fail, and it's a better teaching mechanism. Kind of interesting. So I really like Will Wright's thought process about games as an educational tool, and yet this game that we have here, I kind of wonder if it's complex enough to do what he's describing. So just something to chew over. I think if all games were kind of like Call of Duty style, that's not a learning experience, but with super complex games that allow for multiple solutions to problems, it can be more stimulating than watching a movie or a show, So
I always think it's comical when people go naysay video games and act as though movies and books aren't all just different forms of entertainment, and just that so in this medium that you're engaging with it maybe to a higher degree, they feel somehow that's limiting your ability to be creative. And it's how does that I don't understand how you make that logical leap when you're able to be pre-games, when you're well, I used to read. And is that it? You read and you were using your imagination to, fill in the blanks, but I don't know. And I guess maybe that's the argument, is that in a game, maybe you can react and there's only, 7 possible outcomes that can happen. So therefore we're limiting the, ability for someone to come up with their own conclusion. But I just think I don't know. It's ridiculous. It always just seems we're gonna have 20 years in the future. People are gonna be people raised on virtual reality, they don't know what it's like to be in the real world.
I think it's a problem that video games are a catch-all category too, because I think if you're talking about esport games like Call of Duty or something, that's not necessarily a learning experience. It's something else. It's a sport on a degree. I'm not going to get into that argument with what's a sport, but it's a different experience than something that's a creative thing like this, regardless of how successful this is.
I mean, there are literally games with the intent of teaching.
Sure. Yeah, like Mario is missing. Yeah.
There's just always been people that want to demonize gaming, though. Sure. They'll tell you, even educational games, somebody has that stance of being anti-video game and video games rot your mind and they corrupt you, and kids these days don't know how to be creative on their own terms because they play too many video games. No matter what type of game or what logic you combat them with, they're just going to hold on to that opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know
even
what
though they spend more time watching
it's
NFL or something.
That spend any significant time playing video games.
Yeah.
And for that to be true, the medium would die. If it were to be well, the generation coming up, they don't know how to be creative. Then you'd be okay, well, we're going to run out of shit in the next 10 years then. Because when when y'all die off, shit's going to get real boring because nobody knows how to do anything. So I just feel they're proved wrong instantaneously when it's well, it seems like the world is continuing to innovate and come up with new creative solutions. And it's not just our 80-year-olds pumping that out.
Right. All right, so beyond Will Wright, this game actually has 6 lead designer credits, including Australian designer Alex Hutchinson. He has a developer credit. He worked on The Sims previously, and then went on to work on Assassin's Creed 3, Far Cry 4, and had the misfortune of starting a company acquired by Stadia, which was then shut down. But in 2021, he founded a studio named Raccoon Logic, which I am 100% behind. And then there is a controversy section of his Wikipedia page that reports he tweeted in 2020 that the real truth is streamers should be paying the developers and publishers of the games they stream. They should be buying a license like any real business and pay for the content they use. Boo. Which drew some negative attention, obviously. But otherwise, good luck with Raccoon Logic.
I mean, the streamer is providing advertisement for free the game. But okay.
Right, free advertisement. Yeah, they're doing you a service. Yeah,
like the developers absolutely could request that, and probably it's gonna happen. Probably Nintendo's probably gonna be the first one to request that people not stream something. It's gonna happen someday, but at the moment we're kind of in a golden age of Twitch and YouTube gaming where you can stream anything because it's a game. Another developer, Chaim Gongold, is responsible for the lead design of the Creature Creator. Like he is, and the Sporepedia, he is like singularly responsible for leading the development of that engine. He seems very involved in like AI simulation space. Seems like a cool guy still working in the space. Another developer, Stone Limbrande. Wild names. He was the lead designer on Diablo 3 and is now a lead designer at Riot Games, probably getting poor suckers addicted to League of Legends to this day. And the final developer is Soren Johnson, who actually came from the background of Civilization. He was the lead designer in Civ 4. And to your point, Hunter, what you said, like, did they have a different person developing each stage of the game? Like, they got the lead developer of Civilization to work on this game, which it feels like it's cheating. And it's like, oh, that's why that game is like this. But also, it's such a shallow version of it too. So he went on to, after this, to create one of the most intensive galactic resource trading games, which is called Off-World Trading Company, which kind of has mixed reviews, but a very devoted fan base. I own it. I started playing it and realized, like, I don't have the time for this. It's very much like the last stage of the galactic stage of this game. All right, so in the end of this game, I said there was an end. You get to the center of the galaxy. There's some stuff about the Grox, the main civilization that's at the center and controlling most of it. But you get to the end, there's some very Maxis style humor, a big boomy voice. There's llamas for some reason. There's some goofy Hitchhiker's Guide style dialogue, and then you sort of just do a reset. So that's what happens when you get to the so-called end of this game, but it's mostly about creating the universe and continuing to populate it with creatures, because that's really the experience of it, not reaching the end. There are 2 expansions for this game, one called Creepy and Cute. It was an expansion pack of parts and different like preset colors. Also, Spore Galactic Adventures was released in 2009. So Galactic Adventures was kind of an add-on to the final stage of this game, to the galactic phase. It lets you beam down to planets and do third-person missions. The missions themselves were actually also community creations, so you could do other people's created kind of scripted missions, like to go to this base and find this, and there's this many creatures and stuff. So it's just another case of them giving you the tool set and letting the community create all the things. It's a clever way to make a game, and that was kind of mildly received because, again, the gameplay itself was not that fun apparently, but there were also a couple spin-offs based on this game. The Nintendo DS got Spore Creatures. It's a kind of more RPG focused game without the creature creation stuff. There was a game called Spore Hero on the Wii that focused on the Wii controls. It was pretty poorly received. There was a game on the DS called Spore Hero Arena. And Spore Origins is a game that I think you can still get access to. That is a mobile game focusing just on that tide pool, singular, multicellular organism thing. So maybe if that's really what you enjoy, Hunter, you can grab that. It's called Spore Origins. And something we discussed a little bit, and you were saying that you have a lot of experience with. It created the game, the spin-off game. It's a standalone game called Dark Spore. And that may have been like what we actually would have done a game about, because it has worse reviews than Spore for sure, but it's not playable anymore. After Will Wright left Maxis, Maxis looked at the community and decided, what they want, the feedback that we're getting is they want us to do an action-driven monster fighting game like Diablo, right?
Yep.
So they created a gritty game called Dark Spore. It looks kind of Spore inspired, and it, like the engine on the back end for the creatures, I guess that's why they even bothered linking it into the Spore universe. It runs on the same technology. But it had very mixed reviews in 2013 when it released, and they did some controversial things like requiring constant broadband connection and an EA account even to play it offline. Then in 2016, 3 years after launch, they just shut the servers down and delisted it, making it completely unplayable. And as Kotaku noted, showing just how harmful DRM can be to preserving games, because here's a full-fledged game that they made, and there is, without some serious hacking, there is no way to play this game anymore, which is weird. But yeah, Hunter,
shame.
you said you put a lot of time into that game.
Yeah, Diablo style or Diablo-esque is very spot on. You basically, there are pre-created creatures. They look like more normalized Spore creations, and each one of those creatures has different skills, different spells, like almost a different class. Like, you have your like tanks and your healers, your mages and your whatever. But what they did add is, like, as you play, you pick up gear, and you can attach gear to your characters, and you can change a lot of stuff about that: the shapes, the size, the location. They dumbed down the creature creator into just like armor resizer or whatever.
Gotcha.
So you could have like a big bulky guy with giant shoulder pads, like abnormally large, where it's clipping through his head or whatever. Yeah, the playstyle is you bring 3 of your dark spores down to the planet. You can switch to another one and then switch back when you need to heal him. And you're just doing missions, going down to planets, killing everything that you can.
It's a fun co-op
treasure.
experience.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't really remember much of the story, but I do remember enjoying unlocking the characters, and like, because you have to actually work towards getting them all and unlocking them all. But yeah, I had a lot of fun memories of it, and I still have
Can't
it.
use it anymore.
No.
So speaking of the DRM, I realized I didn't make a note in my sections here. A big source of the ire against Maxis with Spore was the level of DRM that they did. That's the digital rights management for this game. So, everyone ideally wants, like, you buy the game and you can do whatever you want with it, and it's just very easy to install and such. That's, of course, not what the publisher wants. They want to make sure that if you're playing the game, that there's one copy of it you can use, and forcing the user to log on onto an account, just like I think it's pretty normal these days, right? Like, you expect that, like, I'm probably gonna have to log on to play this game. That wasn't always the case, and Maxis was an EA were a big pusher of that. Like Spore, they required you to have your product key, and on launch they allowed you to use your product key a total of 3 times, and if you uninstalled and reinstalled your game 3 times, you would not be able to install it anymore. And that was the case for some people. They just accidentally installed it on too many of their own computers, and then they were locked out of their own game.
That's ridiculous.
It has happened to me with The Sims.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, with The Sims? Yeah, Maxis and EA. They have definitely been at the forefront of pushing the DRM on you. They were actually, for Spore, they were sued because the version of DRM they were using, called Secure ROM, they in no way disclosed that they would be installing that on your computer. There was no way to use the software without it. It wasn't in the end user license agreement or anything. So I think that was settled. But there was a class action lawsuit, EA, because of the DRM they used for this game. There is a video series that you can find today called What Spore Could Have Been, and I'm sure this video is elsewhere. It took me a while to kind of piece together what this video we're looking at is. And in the background here, it is Will Wright talking. He's presenting the very earliest version of Spore. This is a 2005 game showcase of him demoing what Spore can do. And it's similar in many ways to the game that we played. It's missing some kind of core features, but the creatures also look a little bit different too. It's low res, looks like it was recorded by a hand camera in 2005. But there is a creature creator tool, but the creature creator itself is pretty different too. There's a different skeletal system that you're using to create the creature. And
Oh wow!
In ways, it looks more interesting than the final game, and even the way that the limbs are kind of moving around is pretty unique. And wouldn't you know it, it jumps to, after the cell stage, an underwater stage, which you guys had mentioned you wish it went on longer, and it is like in a 3D space. It kind of is the in between the creature stage and the cell stage, where you're an aquatic life form and you continue to do evolving. Yeah, you kind of continue going around and snapping up things and avoiding the enemies, which would and there's looking at the creature evolver thing here again. It's again a more developed. There's like a rib cage system that you can size out, and he's adding flippers to it. And again, they're showing off the algorithm that processes how this thing moves. And okay, he's given it feet now because they're going to move into the next stage. So he's actually make it a tripod. So here it is, moved out onto the land. And again, I just want to emphasize, this is 2005, 3 years before the final game came out. So he's moving around with his stinger tail, and he's put a stinger tail on the end of his tail. And I thought what was one of the more interesting things, he's doing the ability to attack with the tail, and it, like the algorithm they're using in this game has identified that the stinger is on the tail, and he's attacking with the tail. Now, I am very familiar that tech demos it's smoke and mirrors usually, you know, like if you've ever heard about Steve Jobs debuting the iPhone 1, like the phone like that he was using on stage was not functional. Like like they were swapping out iPhones constantly because like this one iPhone could load the phone app, this one could do an internet search, you know. So this tech demo that you're looking at, like I don't think it would play nearly as well as a real game. And yet, like a lot of the stuff they're showing is like cool features that weren't in the final game. They're showing like he killed a creature, there's blood in it, which is a big departure from a Maxis game. And he's kind of chomping down with where his mouth is to eat the creature. And here's another thing that's not in the final game. He drags the creature away, like he's going to eat it somewhere else. So there's other creatures. He runs into this giant weird creature that would absolutely destroy him, so he runs away. Then you're in another creature evolving stage, and she's just showing off some different creatures, but they do some things in these creature in this tech demo in 2005 that aren't in the final game either. There's like again, the different skeletal system with multiple legs. You create something like this, but he's like able to create more like joints, it seems like, than you're able to do in the final game. Even the way the creatures are reacting around it, like they react to things that you drop in, kind of like Sims, like, oh, a new thing, hubba dabba, you know? And it's different than the final version of the game. This looks like more enjoyable RTS than what the final product was. And in here you can see how they zoom in and like you create paths in it, which isn't in the final game. More diverse buildings that you can put in it looks like. All right, so now he zooms out and the crowd kind of gives an applause because it's amazing how big of this world is that he just zoomed out of. It seems a lot more seamless in this tech demo that he's doing here. You zoom out to the whole world view and you see, and he zooms out to show that, oh, you can go to the galaxy, and the crowd applauds again. And there's all these different planets, which is, again, different, and it looks like it's giving you more details about the solar system you're in. They start on Earth on this one because it's a very our galaxy-like kind of system, and you can see details about the planet, and there's different scores for the planet. He shows that like he goes into the moon. So this was a system that they had developed at least in like a show state in 2005 with some features that aren't in the final game. And he continues to like go try and make friends with an alien planet, but they want to shoot him. So he zooms out and uses a planet destroying weapon. Yeah. So there is this perception around Spore. I was talking about the hype for this game. This is a video that was shown 3 years before the game launched, you know? And so people were had expectations for this game that weren't very cartoony, that were very like realistic evolution based. And even that it would be like a learning tool showing like how ecosystems work, you know? So then the game came out and it was what it was. So there's this persistent idea that EA screwed up this project of his by delivering this commercial, cartoony, simple game instead of this, master vision of what Will Wright wanted, and it was showcasing 3 years before. And there's been some efforts to get them to make Spore 2 and, recreate this in the standards that we would have today. There's actually been a community effort for a game called Thrive that looks like it's just focused on the cellular stage. It looks pretty good.
Thrive?
Thrive,
and
yeah.
That is out, or...
So it's like an open source game, so you can download it for free because it's like the community's working on it. And I'm looking at it right now, and it gets really in depth with like, if you add this here, this is connected to that, and there's these different atmosphere pressures, and like this is the temperature, and you operate better at this temperature. So it's just super in depth like a oxygen not included kind of level of management for at the cellular stage. But that's also all they've done is the cellular stage. Anyway, the legacy of this game, it is available on EA's Origin and Steam, usually sitting at $20, which, you know, is the price of a game that is a publisher is standing by. It's like, this is one of our flagship games, even though it came out 13, 14 years ago now. So let's go ahead and talk about the reviews of this game. So the Metacritic score for this game, what do you guys think? Frank, I haven't heard from you in a while. Frank, what do you think?
I forget if it was well received by critics at the time. I'm going to say it was.
Okay.
85.
Tom, what do you think?
I'm going to say 65.
Hunter, what do you think?
I was going to say 65, so I'll go 75.
5 and Carly.
I was going to go 75. I'm going to go 90. Why not?
90.
Let's go higher.
Okay. It actually got a score of 84, so closest is Frank
Nicely
there.
done, Frank. Yeah.
A couple points on the board for you there, Frank. See, the game was grand in concept, kind of questionable in execution. The gameplay aspects are criticized for being shallow, is what most people said, but it was, pretty well received by the critics for what it was. So I'm going to send out a couple.
G4 TV. They gave it a 100. Just as The Sims tapped into the human need to interact, Spore taps into a very deep and similar experience that few games dare to touch, to create and share.
Frank, what you got?
PC Gamer gives it a 91. It may not be my perfect PC game, but I think it's well on its way to becoming one of my favorite toys. And if there's one thing we could all use more of, it's time to just play.
Yeah.
IGN, they gave it an 88, said, while Spore is an amazing product, it's just not quite an amazing game. I can't help but feel the Spore is ambitious and memorable, but I also admit that, save for the cool space stage, there's not a lot of depth here. Rookie gamers are going to feel at home here, but veteran gamers may feel like they need more.
Yeah, for us real gamers. And Carly.
Gatekeeping already.
Yeah. This is from GameSpot 80. Taken on their own, its pieces are nothing special. As parts of a singular, ambitious vision, they work far better. Throw in the best customization tool seen in years and an enthusiastic community brimming with creativity, and you have a legitimately great game that will deliver hours of quality entertainment.
The worst from Destructoid gave it a 60. They said, it's not what we expected, and it's not what the game could have been. It's not perfect or even particularly great. Yet what it offers is wholly unique, and there's a lot of satisfaction to be had in small amounts throughout its runtime. I'm in no hurry to play it through again anytime this week, but heck, maybe in a month or so I'll create a whole new species and send them to the stars. So that is what the critics had to say, but what about the users? So the user score, you guys throw out some numbers real quick.
55.
I'm going to hold at 65.
So there's the people. I'm going to say they give it lower. I'm going to say 70.
80.
All right, Hunter, you are the closest. It is a 5.7 user score on Metacritic.
Wow.
Although on Steam, it is a very positive with 91% positive. Steam does, recommend it or not recommend it. So most people recommend it, but it says it at 5.7. The bandwagoning about kind of the DRM issues was left to the users, not the critics. So that's kind of what sank the score, is the impression that I get. So let's look at some of those reviews from Steam.
CI on Steam said, "The other creatures laughed at my dancing. I laughed at their extinction. 10 out of 10. Recommended."
ASDFG says 100 times better than No Man's Sky. Recommended. I don't know about that.
No Man's Sky.
Well, they're wrong, but
yeah, they are wrong.
It's only 98 times better.
no, as a No Man's Skyer. No.
Is that what you guys call yourselves? You come up with better names.
or Skies. I don't know. No manners. Yeah, we're manners.
No manners.
So this is the Mage on Steam says, "I can finally murder innocent creatures as a potato. I will soon be the galactic dictator." Tater spelled like a, tater.
A tater, sure.
11 out of 10 recommended.
Unruly on Steam says, spend many hours making a creature who eats out of its butt.
Yes, recommended by Unruly. That's what the users had to say. But let's just kind of sum up, come to a conclusion on our own thoughts from original pitch to what they produced. What do you guys think? Did they deliver what they promised? Did they deliver what they could have? Tom, I know you had really high hopes for what this game can be, and you want it to be remade. What do you guys think?
Said it before, and we'll say it again. It's a jack of all trades, master of none. It didn't really do anything with enough depth to, and the fact that they force you through it.
There's enough right here for it to be disappointing. you know, like
greatness.
Yeah. There's enough where you're like, man, this could be really good, but it just doesn't. But yeah, if they came out with a game that was like the premise of just like, hey, sell to creature, and it worked, where it was like we said, that marriage of utility and creativity from beginning to end. Mm-hmm. Oh man, that'd be so good. It'd be so good. Just that game was so cool.
Their scope was too big. They should have honed in a little bit. Like I feel like you can either go to cell stage or go to traveling through space, but you can't really do both.
It'd almost be cool if like they went back in time and they made like Spore, Cell, and like they made a game that was like just the Cell stage from beginning to end, and was just like really fleshed out and a ton of fun. And then they were like, okay, that was a success. That's what we're starting this whole thing off with. That's awesome. Now we're gonna do Spore, and like you said, it'd be like Spore underwater, and you could take your save file.
Yeah, exactly.
And like
import it. Yeah.
And import your save file to this next game. That's a whole fleshed out game all by itself that they worked for, like the next couple years on. And like the fun of it is like, hey, did you play the original Spore Cell? You can actually start with your guy from that.
Yeah, and I think there's proof that works. They do that with
The Sims, with just expansion packs. You can have the same Sims or create new ones for every pack that you add on to your base game. So that they could have absolutely done that model. That would have been really nice.
And being part of a universe works. Like it seems like that EA would buy into that, right? Because you get people invested in a franchise where you can carry your characters over from one thing to another. It seemingly that would work. I think for me, like I said, it was completely forgettable, the latter stages of this game. But that's not to say that, like I started this podcast off with, there is still a devoted community to this game. There was a guy, Pizza God 15. Look him up on your Sporepedia if you want to. I think he's in here. But like he came into my chat and he's like, "Hey, look at my stuff." And he himself has 3,500 creations, I think.
Wow.
By the way, in Sporepedia, there's 191 million creations. He's just spent tons of time in the creature creator, and he loves doing it. It's a blast, which is cool. It's a cool creature creator tool, And obviously, there's people who love creating these things to this day, which is cool. And there's obviously an audience for utilizing a 3D model creator like this. Yeah, so it just seems like an untapped place. And on top of that, EA, there's a lot of money to be made there too, it seems like,
I think the game has a lot. I mean, it did a lot, Yeah. So I don't say it has a lot of potential because it's shown a lot, but they could definitely remake it. I mean, they could just kind of try to fuck over No Man's Sky and make a mixture of Spore and No Man's Sky. You know what I mean? Because it kind of is. I mean, it's kind of the original No Man's Sky to some extent. But you can, create your spaceship. You can create the character you play as to a very finite kind of way. You know, so I totally don't understand why they haven't done a remake at this point. Maybe just server wise, it's not worth to run a server like that. They don't, or at least they don't believe it is.
I just think that if you could make it work. And like on the Cell level, how like your placement mattered. But let's say you go all the way to the creature stage and okay, you have 200 points in the creature creator and like every little thing has an effect. Make a creature and you can like fight with it in multiplayer or coexist with it in like this multiplayer, area where everyone's doing different things. Maybe you're being, I don't know, just by existing alone, you're able to get more points and kind of go like Slither almost, where you're like going and going and going and just existing and gathering more points, where games like Rust, you know what I mean? But like you start with just like whatever this base creature is in the longer, and like I don't know, it just seems so cool. It seems so cool to like there's some creature out there that's like been alive so long, it's like huge and attacks in its own like particular way, and I don't know, just there's limitless.
There's definitely something there.
And I guess like maybe the animation is like one of the hardest parts there, where it's like, okay, yeah, fine, you have like 8 arms and they're doing different things, but like maybe like
the algorithm has to figure that out.
Right, exactly. And it not just be like press this button and this happens, but like it like makes sense in a fluid way, like how you're gonna there's something so close there that I just feel like is such a super cool game. But
all right. Well, let's jump into the scores then. We could score it on a 0 to 10 scale, but we play a lot of bad games here, games that are so bad we think they should go past 0 on a normal scale and get into the negatives. A game with a negative score means it's so bad you're enjoying it again. So what do you think about this game? 10 is a perfect game, 0 is in Garbage Can Valley, no enjoyment, and negative 10, starting with Carly.
I'd give it a positive 4. There's a lot of issues. It loses its own sense of self, what I would expect the game itself to be. It loses itself along the way, but I think that's kind of a trend with Maxis games, is that they tend to sway towards some ridiculousness, and they have fun with that. In the Sims games, they reference a lot of aliens and llamas as well. I know that was mentioned earlier.
Llamas are a thing,
That's a thing for Maxis games. So I think I positive 4 as somebody who is a fan of this developer. And while it's not the greatest game, and I could see why somebody would come into it and walk away disappointed and not have their expectations met, I think there is still fun to be derived from it.
There you go. Hunter, what do you think?
I'm having trouble scoring this one. It's definitely a positive number, because I don't think there's really anything about it that makes it bad. It just doesn't necessarily do anything good either. I think had I made it to the Galactic stage, I might have enjoyed it a little more, just because that's a little more my style of game. But all the stages that I liked, like the Cell stage and the Creature stage, were so limiting after a while. I thought there was going to be more to each of those stages, but once I kept going through, and like we said, like 10 minutes, it's just like, okay, it's already done with that. So was starting to play a game, and then they were like, nope, now you're playing a different game. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, what am I playing now? And they're like, good, now you're playing a different game. And I'm just like, oh, I have a problem doing that myself, and I don't like it. So when I'm playing one game and it's making me feel like I'm playing 4 or 5 different games, I don't like it. So I'll go with a 3.
3, all right. Tom, what do you think?
I don't know, I have the same struggles. I feel like I'm going to score it too high. And maybe it's purely just because of like what I wish it to be. I'm like scoring it for, like just giving it like these extra points.
Score.
And I genuinely dislike the game from like Tribal on. If I'm judging it as a whole, I feel like it suffers. But if I'm judging it in pieces, then it benefits from it. I loved making the creatures and like how they just watching them move and like all of that. And I think the idea is so novel, and like just that alone just hasn't been done, and like shocks me that like hasn't been done since. And I don't know. So I feel like I just like have to go higher with it, even though I found it disappointing. So I'm actually going to give it a 6.
Wow. Okay. A 6. Frank, what do you think?
It's so interesting and unique. I'm going to give it, an 8.
Wow, an 8.
Yeah.
That's higher than it's not higher than the critics overall, but it's a lot higher than the reviewer or the users. All right. I don't need you to expand. I just wanted to give you the space too if you wanted to.
That's how I feel.
And that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I agree with Tom that this is a unique game. I can't believe more people haven't done it. Playing it in 2020, oh god, it's 2022, was very frustrating in that there's so many bugs that like you don't expect to have to deal with anymore, like the pathing and stuff. But man, there's something unique there that it's an itch that it scratches of like, this is like, how come I don't do more creature creation, and evolving my creature in the way that I want it to? Sure, like RPGs, you're kind of evolving your character, right, with a skill tree, but I don't know, there's something about this that I really enjoy, and for all of its many, many flaws that we talked about in detail, I don't know, I still enjoyed it. And the Galactic stage, that's a cool gameplay style. It's weird that it's like 5 different games in here, and most of them are done poorly, but as a big concept, I still like it. It's just it fails in many ways, so I'm going to go 6 as well. So we have reached the end, and for the second week in a row, I do not have a prize printed, but this time I have a good reason for it. And the reason is I found a method in which you are able to save your own creature out of the game.
I knew this was coming.
And convert it into a 3D object into a printable file.
What?
Yeah, so let's see here. What our score is at? Fuck it, I'm feeling generous, and I love the idea of this, even though I haven't tried it yet. Tom, you dug yourself out of a impossible. No, you didn't. You did dig yourself out, but you started at a disadvantage, and you got a couple points for puns. So, if I didn't just dock you -10 from the beginning, you would have had 2 points. Everyone's pretty much on the same level. So, everyone, if you want to send me your favorite 3D creature, I'm gonna try and print everyone's creatures, and then I'll try and show them off on stream. This was actually a thing that Will Wright had talked about, and for a small group of beta testers, they had done this. Like they had a little service tied into the creature creator where like they had a button there. It was like print your creation, and they had teamed up with a company that did 3D prints, and you could order the models of your creatures, which seems very EA. It's another way of monetizing your creatures, but I think there's lots of reasons that's difficult to do, especially like when there are very thin little like appendages and stuff. And I just want to give everyone just a big congratulations too, because in a game in which it is so easy to make a creature that looks like a phallus, we didn't reference it once. So I just want to congratulations all around.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. I haven't seen your creature yet.
And you already said you're printing all of them. So.
Yeah.
Oh no.
What have I done? My other planet.
All clips in this podcast were used in compliance with the U.S. Copyright Fair Use Exemption for criticism and commentary. Garbage Game Night makes no claims to ownership over any games played and has no affiliation with any developer or publishing company. For additional references on cited articles and quotes, check our episode-related blog at garbagegamenight.com. Or if you have a comment about the game we reviewed or have a suggestion, drop us a line.